Hello and welcome, Rangers. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we've got another Red Ranger podcast, as we will be discussing, honestly, one of my favorite bromance in the early days, Jason and Tommy. Admittedly, my favorite bromances are usually those involving Zach in the first season, because I really like Zach.
Who doesn't?
But before we get to any Zach bromances, I think we need to tackle the Jason one. After this, I am so going to vouch for us doing a Zach and Jason bromance video at some point, maybe as part of a Black Ranger podcast. As for Jason, the relationship between Jason and Tommy is complicated. If you were to follow the Ranger board from a few years ago, you'd think they were arch enemies and Tommy was some sort of vampire. They're fairly moronic out there, and we're not. Early on, Jason and Tommy had a bit of a rivalry, as Tommy was the competitor at a martial arts local tournament. And not to mention, he was also the Green Ranger, possessed by Rita Repulsa. But quickly enough, when Tommy was liberated from the mind control and was faced with a future where he had done horrible things and would have to live it down, Jason was the second Ranger to offer him forgiveness. The first being Kimberly, because of course she was. But it's really Jason offering the helping hand is the defining moment for Tommy, as he goes from someone who might never live this down and might have to endure untold amount of pain and self-recrimination to getting on the first step towards self-forgiveness. And the one who sets him on that path is Jason. Jason is determined that in no way should Tommy blame himself or self-flagellate. Tommy is to fight for his redemption and move forward, get back on his feet, and become a valued member of the Power Ranger family. The one who wants Tommy in the family is Jason. It is Jason who honestly runs to bat for Tommy and makes sure that Tommy knows he's wanted. Here's the reality. Tommy was left on the side of the road as a kid, was adopted by the Olivers, yet has always felt alone and has always been a vulnerable young boy up until this moment. It is really Jason, who comes from a wholesome family where he's beloved by his cousins, his uncles, and his father and mother, and has always had everything a guy could want, despite being working class. And yet, Jason, epitomizing every value that the Power Rangers should aspire to, forgives him and goes even further, basically adopts Tommy as his brother. And I'm actually going to say something weird. The least interesting thing about Jason is that he's the Red Ranger. And I know someone's going to kind of take offense at that, but just hear me out. As a Red Ranger, Jason was kind of middling. He doesn't have any great accomplishments under his belt. He's not a great fighter like a lot of other Red Rangers are. He's not a great leader, but what he is a great man. He is great in a way that very few Red Rangers ever managed to get to. Sure, Leo's a better fighter. TJ's a better leader and strategist. Rocky's a better fighter. Tommy, who's just all but perfect as Red Ranger. But is there a single moment with any of these characters where they look an enemy in the eye, someone who nearly destroyed them 1,000 times, crushed the hearts of those like Zach, Billy, and most of all the very sensitive young Kimberly, and just extends a hand and says, "Let me help you. You're one of us." And doesn't even hesitate, doesn't even bat an eyelash. His only concern is to make sure that Tommy knows his place is with them. And he doesn't take no for an answer. He just says, "Will you fight with us, Tommy?" This moment honestly makes Jason one of the most likable characters in the franchise.
We may sometimes be harsh with Jason, and regardless of the entire rivalry between the two,
which was never a thing after
exactly, odd that we don't emphasize this moment where Jason told him, "You're a Power Ranger. Rita was controlling you."
Going forward from this scene always emphasizes his bond with Tommy. Arguably, Jason becomes defined by this bond. This relationship is the most important in Jason's life as a character as we see him. It is Jason who goes to fight for the Green Candle. Jason fails. And ultimately, this is one of the saddest aspects of Power Rangers. Not because of Tommy, but for Jason. Jason vowed to take care of and protect Tommy. And yet, he fails that vow. At no point does he ever succeed when it comes to Tommy. He never does. It is really sad to see Jason go from someone who was strong, confident, and whatnot. And in some ways, he was a stronger man before the Green Ranger saga than he was after. In that, at the end of the day, after his failure with the Green Candle, Jason agonizes over that moment, over how he nearly chose the Green Candle over Tommy's own life. And yet, how he failed to grab the candle, and how he could not match up against Goldar. It's a sad thing to see a character fall and fail. We see that with Jason. He failed. But here's the thing. It's a failure that Jason obviously struggles with. Tommy forgives him. Tommy sees it as there's nothing to forgive. But Jason is failing. He will never forgive himself or let go of this. Ultimately, it is to Jason that the green Morphin coin is given. And it's actually kind of fitting that Tommy gives it to Jason. But I kind of think that on some level, psychologically, Jason's not happy about the decision. Because on some level, Jason feels he failed in his vow to protect this young boy he adopted. And make no mistake, he did adopt Tommy as a kid brother. And when Jason did, he inaugurated himself as the elder sibling. And as an older sibling, he has a duty to protect and safeguard his baby brother and always shield him from the world. It's akin to Kaiba failing Moku. And I think that the way Jason builds up Tommy in his own head is no less important than how Kaiba builds up Mokuba in his head. And so for him to fail Tommy and then be given Tommy's powers, I think makes Jason feel like on some level he took advantage of Tom, or that he might have betrayed Tom, and that his reward for his failure is to receive the green power. We need to recognize that there is a trauma here. I don't think Tommy realized that maybe to an extent the green powers should have been given to someone like Zach or Billy or Kimberly instead, because it would not have been traumatizing for them like it was for Jason. For Jason, I don't think he's ever going to be able to look Tommy in the eye over that for a while. But on some level, I actually think there's no one better to get the powers. Like, Jason uses the green powers better than Tommy did. Let's be honest. Jason is really good with those powers. And yet, he doesn't like it, I think, on any level, because he adores Tommy. He idolizes Tommy. Let's just be honest. I think that one of the things that Jason loves about Tommy so much is that Tommy is the gentlest, kindliest human being around. Deep down, Tommy is kind and soft with everyone. And I think Jason wishes he was as gentle and kind. But I also think that Jason, on some level, thinks that because Tommy is so soft and gentle with everyone, he needs protecting from the world. And that whose duty is it to protect Tom? Jason. But then you get the second failure when the green powers fade. It's not even Jason's fault. It has nothing to do with Jason. It has everything to do with the green powers just being completely broken at that point because of the green candle. And yet, Jason hiding the coin from Goldar, handing it back to Tommy, and all that was clever. That was good. Jason did a great job. That's a victory for Jason. And yet, in the Missing Green, I think it is, episode, where Tommy writes to Jason telling him, come on, get over the insecurity. It's fine. I lost the powers. Those powers were never going to last. That was Zed who did that to me. And yet, Jason self-recriminates. Jason blames himself and admits he basically will never forgive himself. But here's the thing. It's behind them, and there's no point in self-flagellating. It is sad that while Jason saves Tommy from self-flagellation, Jason self-flagellates ever afterwards. In a way, it's like somehow Jason banishes the guilt from Tommy, but transmits it to himself. In that regard, it's really beautiful and ugly all at once. Ugly in that Jason shouldn't be doing this, but beautiful in that for Tommy to grow as a man and a ranger, and in order for Jason to help build him up, Jason takes this and takes it onto himself, this burden, so that Tommy may have wings. It's a very beautiful and tragic thing all at once.
But it's not Jason's burden.
No. But here's the interesting thing I find. By the time Tommy becomes Red Ranger, he reclaims that burden. But we can see that he's got square shoulders that can handle it. Tommy takes it onto himself and handles it perfectly. He's now a man who can shoulder that burden. And yet, arguably, now this is something I do find Zio a little fascinating. Jason refuses to give up that burden. He still self-flagellates, still believes that Tommy needs him to protect him. Jason still holds himself up as Tommy's older brother. Try perusing some fanfics. For some reason, people have the weird idea that Jason is some sort of big brother figure to Kimberly, when they don't even interact all that much. They're friendly, but they're not really close. They barely know each other, to be quite blunt. There is no relationship between the two of them. If there's anyone Jason considers his kid brother or kid sibling, it's Tommy. And arguably, the secondary character he'd act like an older sibling towards, I would argue, is Billy. Heck, Jason has a really interesting friendship with Kat. I really liked their interactions. That doesn't mean I want them paired together, but if you were to tell me Kat is like a baby sister to Jason, I'd say, yeah, I totally buy it. But Kimberly, I don't see it. Kimberly has more of a relationship with the likes of Zach, Billy, and of course, Rocky and Aisha. There's no real relationship with. But Jason's relationship with Tommy is arguably one of the most important. And I will also make a weird argument. If they were to ever reboot or portray this in comics or novels, Jason is to Tommy what Jonathan Kent is to Superman, or Alfred, or even Thomas Wayne are to Bruce Wayne. He's in a way a mentor and an older brother. He is a springboard for Tommy to climb up to greatness. The only way Tommy could have become the greatest Ranger was through the support, semi-mentorship. And I do say semi-mentorship because Jason did not mentor Tommy as a fighter, but he mentored him as a man, teaching him that it wasn't his fault. It's only for Jason that Tommy learned that. Jason imparted to Tommy moral lessons that Tommy would need and a strength that Tommy would require to become the ranger and the leader he was meant to be. And yeah, I know Zordon is the dad, but is the father any less important than the older brother in this situation? Or the brother any less important or more important than the father? No. That's my entire thesis with this video.
There's a reason why. I've heard that people think that Jason should have been a bit more upset when Tommy was handed the reins of leadership. But considering everything that you brought up, I think it would have been more a relief to Jason.
I think that's a misunderstanding and an attack on Jason. It's character assassination. And here's where I'm going to make a weird argument, I think, in the eyes of some, but I've always kind of seen it this way. Remember, Jason has a big wide grin when Tommy becomes inaugurated as the leader of the Power Rangers and as the White Ranger. The pride you can see on Jason's face is that of my boy. My kid brother is leader. My kid brother is now the most powerful Power Ranger. I taught him that. Tommy's a messianic character. Jason was grooming Tommy for leadership from the word go, arguably, from a mythological thematic point of view. And it is Jason who would have wanted Tommy to be the next leader. It's not only that Jason gives his blessings to it, it's that this is the culmination of everything Jason would have wanted as a character. We got to bear in mind, Jason is an older brother archetype. He's a warrior archetype, but he's also the older brother. And the role of the older brother in a lot of mythology is to prepare the younger brother or the younger sister for what their destiny is. But this, of course, depends on what the archetype of the younger sibling is. But where I kind of think that they should have taken Jason up to the next level is bring him in space as the main hero, and as a bit of an older brother to TJ as well. This would have allowed Jason to step out of the shadow of Tommy. And as the eldest son, in a way, of Zordon, he would have had pride of place in forgiving himself. This arc of Jason's throughout season 1 and the first bit of season 2 of being older brother and grooming Tommy for leadership is a great one. And here's the thing. It's not as the Red Ranger that I would argue Jason truly shines, as mentioned. It's as Tommy's older brother. It's as a man, imparting wisdom and courage to his younger sibling and teaching his younger sibling to forgive himself. The only sad thing is, if only Jason could have learned that lesson also. If this video pleased you, do feel free to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Jason taking down the possessed Green Ranger.